Good evening. It's 7 o'clock, and we have two meetings tonight. The first is the Cunningham Town Board, and that will be followed by the regular meeting of the Urbana City Council. I'd like to call the Cunningham Town Board, the meeting of the Cunningham Town Board to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Ammons?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Jacobson?
Here.
Mr. Madigan?
Here.
Miss Marlin?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe?
Here.
Mayor Pressing.
Here. The first item of business is the minutes of the previous meeting, April 7th, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Jacobson. Any additions or corrections? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. The Committee to Verify Bills. Michelle Mayall, Township Supervisor.
Bills for May, including April interim checks. Town fund is $52,280.08. General Assistance Fund is $21,874.96.
Are there any questions about the bills? Is there a motion?
Bills as shown. Town fund and general assistance fund.
Okay, motion by Dennis Roberts, seconded by Eric Jacobson. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. Reports of officers. Michelle? Anybody else? I see the assessor, but he has no report. Petitions and communications. Is there anyone who would like to address the Cunningham Town Board? Okay, we'll move on. Unfinished business. I don't think we have any that we're dealing with tonight. New business, the designation of the final amended budget for fiscal 2015. Michelle.
I sent out an email on April 30th to everybody with some new figures, and the reason that it needed changed is because I received an email from Dan Welch with potential loss of revenue for more Carl properties. The lawsuit that was filed last year, right? Included some new parcels, so the township has the potential of losing another $115,024.81. So that was added to the budget in the line item under Carl refund, under town fund and general assistance. And that was the main reason for amending the tentative budget.
Okay, are there any questions? Diane?
Yes, you also had some other changes in the budget, and probably the thing that leaped out at me was the reduction in the caseload. Can you explain that? The general, I believe that was in the general assistance.
Yes, it is the personal allowances line item. I reduced it by $166,000, and the reason being is our caseload has dropped. The high was 178, and it is now hovering around 70 per month. The main reason for the drastic drop was back when I took office in May. The caseworker and I went through every single client file that was open at the time. There were discrepancies with verifications that were not supplied when the cases were opened. Some examples were compliance with parole or probation. You have to have that before you're opened, and there were cases that were opened that did not have that. There was some clients that presented forged documentation that we have known signatures for many years of certain landlords, and those were, some were forged, and then there were some workfare compliance verifications that were not being done, so people weren't doing their workfare, and they should have been terminated prior to that. So we went through every single file, and when we asked the clients to bring in that verification, They either called and canceled their assistance or didn't show back up. And if somebody appealed, then we went to the Public Aid Appeals Committee board, which is the protocol for an appeal, and we have not lost one appeal. So we followed all the rules in the handbook, you know, with each case, and that is why, Diane, there's the big drop.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure, Carol Ammons.
I just wanted to ask if the reduction in that line item will affect the possibility of the township client base increasing.
The grant increasing?
Yes, increasing. If people needed the assistance, does the reduction ensure that there would be no revenue for them to receive assistance if people came in and met the requirements?
There's money for general assistance. We're required by law to have that program regardless of whether or not we have money, but we do have the money for that.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. I was just wondering if the change, I'm sorry, I feedback, if the change means that you can only have a certain amount of clients.
No.
That's not the case.
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you said you're down to 78 now?
70, averaging, you know, some months.
So that's sort of continuing from month to month? You don't notice any up or down from that?
No, it's been the graph that I have that I gave everybody that's attached to the claims. I think April was 70, February and March I believe was 68. So we're right around the 70 clients per month mark, give or take a couple. Some months are,
Okay.
you know.
And can I ask one?
Sure,
one
go ahead.
additional question? I just wanted to, the requirements to qualify for township assistance, they have not changed, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so do you need, okay, Diane, go ahead.
Just to verify, you gave every single person the opportunity to clarify their situation or reapply or provide whatever information that they were required to apply.
Yes, we sent them either an update appointment for them to come in and bring the information in question, or a deadline to turn that information in by. And there was just no response.
Okay, thank you.
Mike Madigan?
Well, I just want to commend you, Michelle, for actually enforcing the law.
Thank you.
Apparently, that's been lax, and I'm wondering, frankly, how long that's been the case. So I just want to commend you for getting a handle on this and actually doing your job.
Thank you.
So I think that's a really tremendous thing. You know, township assistance is important for those who need it. And if you cannot prove the need, you should not be subsidized, in my opinion. So I appreciate your work.
Thanks.
Okay, so do you need, Eric Jacobson?
I'd just like to point out something else that I think is very commendable. I'm just really happy that you're able to increase the township support for the social service funding. So that's, hooray.
Okay, so do you need a motion on the designation of the final amended budget, or do you want to go through all these discussions first?
Charlie?
Charlie?
Michelle, so if I'm reading everything correctly, you've got the social services 100,000. Is there any more in there? Could we get 10 or 20,000 more? No, you know. Okay.
There's
I'm
barely that.
There's barely that. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what the revenue. So figuring the new losses. I'm trying to find the line that says plus. You know, what's the surplus or expected? What's our cushion at the end of the year?
Well, it depends on if the Carl money becomes an expense or a revenue.
Yeah.
Once again.
Yeah. No. Assuming it's not a revenue.
If it's an expense and ends up being an expense, to be quite honest, we would not be doing the social service program at all. Because of the amount of money that the town fund is hit from the Carl. I mean, in the town fund, which is where the social service grant program is. On the total for just the town fund administration, the Carl refund is $148,604. There's also that same amount in the assessor's budget, and then it's doubled in the general assistance budget. So the potential is over $600,000 for the township that's on a $1.3 million budget.
Okay, so the budget expenses are, okay, so you have on page 15, you have 1.9 million minus 600 for Carl, to 1.3 as the total budget expenses. And we have, so 1.3 there, and you have, what are the revenues expected next year? Do you have an estimate of the revenues? Where's that column?
On the page that is the ordinance, which is like I believe the 4th page, the ordinance has the expected estimated revenue and expenditures on it. And that revenue comes from, of course, property tax, which is our biggest. And then we also receive reimbursement from the Social Security Administration for clients that we get approved for Social Security benefits. As an example, today we got notification that 2 of our clients were approved for Social Security, and our reimbursement for one of them was $243, which was our old grant amount, and the other one was $5,700. So every year that's a guesstimate, but we had a client, I believe 2 months ago, that has been on for years and years and years, and we just got reimbursement for her, and it was $25,000. So the revenue for Social Security reimbursement depends on, it takes at least 3 years to get a decision after all of the appeals and, administrative law judge hearings and everything. So we really push the people that are disabled and unable to work to keep appealing their decisions when they're denied, and usually it works out for them.
Okay, so if I understand things, okay, now I understand a little better, yeah. So you're going to basically, the Carl expenses are deducted here, and we drop from having a 1.8 to a 1.2 between years here as the...
Right.
Yeah, okay.
If you take minus out the Carl and the presence expenditures, if we have to pay those property taxes back, the 1.3 is the amount that I levied also. It's
Okay,
exact.
right, yeah.
The 1303358. So in essence, it's a balanced budget if you don't include the Carl money, because we don't know where it's
Right.
at in the case right now.
Diane?
On the Town Fund Administration Division part of the budget, there's a $20,000 allocation for Build Urbana program. Is that a new?
No, this is one of the things that I had a discussion with the auditor. It was under, I believe, building maintenance in the previous budgets, but according to the auditor, it needed to have its own line item. But that's the whole Build Urbana program that people still get reimbursed for a couple of more years. Even though the program was done with, there was 5 years from the date that program ended that they were going to continue to reimburse or whatever they do. So we get billed from the city for the Build Urbana program every year.
So that's just actually a more accurate classification of the
Correct.
expense. Okay.
Correct.
Eric Jacobson?
I'm asking this partly tongue-in-cheek, but maybe not. Given the size of the potential hit relative to the budget from an adverse decision on Carl, is it feasible for the township to go bankrupt without affecting the city finances?
Good question. We have the money in surplus that if we do have to pay Carl back, You cannot have more than like 1 year expenditures in your surplus. So if we have to pay back that Carl money, we will have less than 6 months in our surplus. So,
Okay, any other questions? Do you want to talk about the social service funding before we vote on the budget? The items that you're going to, the agencies that you want to give to?
I just wanted to, I'm not sure if everybody knows that on the application, Janelle had added last year, I believe, whether or not the agency would be willing to be a work site for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
So who we currently fund is CWIT, GCAP, Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, Eastern Illinois Food Bank, and Wesley Evening Food Pantry. We have workfare sites at the Time Center, which is Community Elements, Eastern Illinois Food Bank, Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, GCAP, and then 3 places that do not ask for grant money, which is the Transition Store, Champaign County Nursing Home, and the Habitat Restore. We also have as workfare sites. So when everybody decides on the money and who's going to get funded and what amounts, we would like to keep the people that are willing to be our workfare sites.
Okay, so we can vote on the amount, but we won't vote on the recipients until we get done with the whole social service
Yes,
thing.
and
Okay.
I just wanted to, kind of just put a bug in your ear about who has worked with us and our clients,
Okay.
and that there are, certain places like Crisis Nursery and high confidentiality places that won't take our clients either because, of criminal background or, things like that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Are you ready to vote on the budget? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Smythe,
Seconded.
seconded by
Dennis.
Dennis Roberts. I noticed that Diane raised her hand, but you didn't talk. Okay, go ahead.
I've shared my position with the council and the mayor, but I'm going to share it with the public now, and that is I will not be supporting funding for either township social service funding or funding from the city's general fund. Like most other people in Urbana, I opened my property tax bills today, and it's a stunning amount to see your taxes go up in 1 year. Personally, my family will be paying $1,000 more in taxes on our home, and on our rental property, about $450 more dollars over last year. Our assessed valuation didn't change. This means that our tenants, for example, are going to be paying $110 each for charity care. This is all due to the hospital tax exemptions where Urbana taxpayers are now paying for charity care for a 25 county region for a service area of 1.2 million people, and I, in all good conscience, cannot ask them to spend one more penny on social services, even though all these organizations are certainly deserving and we've supported them in the past. I just can't ask people to spend another cent on this particular, and it really is painful to say that. I do think that means we have, typically we've spent about $300,000 total, a couple $100,000 from the city with CDBG money in there, and then about $100,000 from the township over the last 5 years I've been on the council. I would like to see us take some of that money and conduct the facilities planning and study that we've been talking about for 5 years so that we can plan for the future of this city. We need to be looking at all of our properties, all of our space, how we're utilizing that space, and how we can plan for the future. If you turn around, you'll see that desk over there against that wall. We now have somebody working in the city council chambers at this desk over here because there's no space in this building to put them. So I really think to serve all the residents of Urbana and to stick to our core mission in this city, we need to do this facilities plan. And I'm told that's going to cost close to $100,000. I hope it can be less if we utilize some of our very, very capable staff, but we do need to get this plan done, and that's what I would like to see this, at least this money spent for this year, so we can plan for the future to serve all the residents of Urbana. But I will not be allocating any dollars for consolidated social service funding, regretfully.
Michael Madigan.
Well, I had intended to make very similar comments, and Diane made it far more eloquently than I could have. So I second her comments. My business, my residents in this city will pay an additional $3,500 in property taxes this year. I'm not about to blame Carl. They are the premier employer in this city, except for the University of Illinois. They are an outstanding hospital. They are a quality institution. They own Health Alliance, which has 500 employees right across the street who are probably going to leave this city in 2017 because of the very vitriolic comments that have come out of this chamber right here. It's a sad, sad fact, but that's the case. They own property in Champaign, so Champaign will have another premier employer in this Twin City area, but this one is a former Urbana employer. This will happen in 2017. Make no bones about it. Lincoln Square will be, once again, a shadow of its former self. A businessman who owns that property will be devastated. There will be little hope of that being filled with any employer of any kind of similar quality. Furthermore, for us to sit here and decide how we're going to dole out my money, Diane's money, all of your money in additional taxes for social services is just wrong. The township, it's debatable. The city should not be doling out social service money. I absolutely will not, again, this year, support city tax dollars going to local social services. But you need to understand, my business, my tiny business in this town, donates thousands of dollars to these very charities every year. But I cannot condone taxpayer dollars going to it. Here's what the theory ought to be. Not the theory, here's what the practice ought to be. Let's have a vibrant economy. Let's have a low, broad tax base. Let's not nickel and dime businesses. Let's not disincentivize businesses to be in this town. Let's not increase fees every year. Let's try to figure out a way to say, hey, how can all those businesses that Champaign gets decide that they like Urbana just as well? And then guess what happens? More businesses in town who, as a part of their business plan, each and every year donate hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of dollars a year to charity, to the arts, to all of these very positive community things. Then they're enabled to do that. They're here. They can do that. The way to do it is not to tax the folks whose paychecks have not gone up for the last several years more and more and more and drive them away. And with that, I think I'm going to leave it. I really appreciate Michelle's scouring of the folks who did not meet the social service standard, not the social service standard, the township standard for assistance. They should not be on there. I mean, if you want to change the law, change the law. But the bottom line is, folks were defrauding the system. She's scoured the system. I appreciate that, but I cannot in good conscience vote for this budget.
Eric Jacobson.
Well, since since people are unburdening themselves of their deepest feelings about this, I'll do a little unburdening. We are in an economy where Mike may not, I don't know if you agree with this or not, Mike, but the mathematics is there. The public sector is the ability of the public sector to do a lot of things is shrinking. The ability of very wealthy individuals to do more is expanding. This is just the way that economic trends have been going. I will support social service funding this year at some level, but I also want to urge us to move towards the creation of a foundation for Urbana. In the same manner that there's an Urbana Park District Foundation, that there's an Urbana Library Foundation, an entity that can, within the law, solicit funds for improving the quality of life in Urbana in ways that are, I mean, Mike and I might disagree on what our core mission is as a city, but nevertheless there are some things that are outside of our core that should be moved to, I would say, the private nonprofit sector. This is the way that the economy is going. I'm reminded that in a show, a British show that aired on PBS called many, many decades ago, I'm aging myself, Glittering Prizes, one of the Oxford or Cambridge types said, "No sane man relies on public funds." And but that may or may not be true. But but I think we need a foundation. I think we need a I've had discussions with some of you. I've heard some feedback that, well, this is what United Way does. This is, but I think we need something that's focused on Urbana, on quality of life and the needs of the residents of Urbana, a private foundation. We don't have it yet. I will vote for social service funding. I'll play my role in, voting for the funding. I'll gather people's votes and so forth. But I think we've got to move towards a private foundation.
I would.
Mike, you want to respond?
You know what? I agree with you, and I think the way to achieve that is a vibrant economy, a vibrant business atmosphere, and I'm absolutely willing to work with you on that. Sorry, I get a little charged up there, but it's it is personal to me because I'm a resident of this community too, and I'm a business owner here, and it gets tough. I mean, it gets awfully tough. Inflation in my business right now is absolutely off the charts. Absolutely off the charts. And I struggle every day with deciding whether or not to raise prices or where can I cut expenses. And I agonize over expense cutting, and because a lot of times that means people. But I absolutely 100% agree with you that there ought to be a philanthropic effort to support the culture of Urbana. I'm not trying to denigrate the culture of Urbana at all. I'm just suggesting that the way to get there is not through tax dollars. The way to get there is through willful donation, and that happens when folks have excess funds, and the whole class warfare thing doesn't work very well with me. I think that for the most part, anyone of means in this community supports this community proportionally. I don't think there are a bunch of robber barons hiding out in my neighborhood or Stone Creek or in other places who aren't very generous with their good fortune. So while I will agree with you on the end, I just have a very strong disagreement with the means to that end.
Okay, Dennis.
Okay, so that's a kind of an interesting conversation, and you know, the idea of creating a self-sufficient foundation seems reasonable to me. What I would not do, though, is cut cold turkey the people who've been dependent upon social services and tell them that, well, this year you're just out of luck. I certainly would think that if we had a plan to convert our energies into private sector funding or to create a foundation, that it would have to take place over a series of years, and that that if we do anything like this, we should approach it through graduated steps. At the same time, I think that we have to hold responsible one of the largest corporations in our midst, and I would call Carl Foundation a corporation rather than a non-for-profit, who don't seem to have any difficulty raising their fee schedule for services at a blink of an eye. I think that if they were doing their share of public service, we wouldn't be in quite the same shape as we are today. But that's a decision that's made by their board, and that's the route that they're taking. But in the meantime, I don't think that it's appropriate for us to just suddenly drastically reduce all funding to people who are the most needy in the community, who need the services because there's sometimes no other place to get them.
I would just like to say one thing, and that is I got my property tax bill today, and the amount of increase for the city of Urbana was 0. Because we dealt with that last year. We knew this was coming. We knew it was going to hurt everybody because the schools in the Park District don't have the flexibility that we do. So we cut our budget and we raised the sales tax, and our sales tax is the same as Champaign. But I don't think that the city can bring new businesses in by further cutting our services. And I think we have to solve this tax problem. I've talked with a woman who has lived in Massachusetts for a long time, and she told me that in Boston for the last 10 years, the hospitals have been paying payments in lieu of taxes. And we had that arrangement with Carl. And then Carl took us to court and claimed that we had induced the assessor to assess them, which is complete nonsense, but that's what they took us to court for. So we filed a countersuit, which is that this new state law violates the Illinois Constitution. So that's where we are. Bill Brown.
Yeah. I think for the $100,000 for the township, I think that's a good investment. We did raise their tax rate by a couple of cents, and I think $100,000 comes out to about 1.5 cents out of that $10.46 that people were paying. So that's a relatively small amount. I think it's a decent investment when you consider that a lot of that does go to things like workforce development that not only helps the people that we're serving, but also helps the business community, so that they do have better employees and have a prepared workforce. So there are advantages to everybody. I'm not going to come down on Carl. I think they're just doing what the law allows them to do. I think we're doing the same thing. We're protecting our residents' interests by fighting the law that allowed them to do that. So I'm good with the budget for the township. When it comes to the city, I know the library is being asked and it has proposed a budget cut of more than $200,000. The city's been cutting money, so we're going to have to look pretty critically at what we spend the social services money on for the city.
Mayor President?
Yes, Carol?
I just wanted to, I've been listening to the conversation and just wanted to make a couple of comments. First and foremost, certainly I'll support the allocation and wish it was more that we could contribute to the social service funding. As long as the city of Urbana collects taxes from all of us, and my tax bill came as well, and we all pay into those taxes, we should certainly provide services to the most needy people in our communities. And so to leave them out of the access of their government is in my opinion, an inappropriate thing to do, especially since we use tax dollars to build independent businesses out of everyone's tax dollars. So so ignoring the needs of the community and those who are making minimal wage would be a very hard thing for me to do. I could not support any budget that did not include the most needy in our community. And what Michelle has done in the township allocations for the clients is the appropriate thing to do. Every person that receives township benefits should certainly meet the requirements of receiving those benefits. But those who need the benefits, those benefits should be there, and we certainly should be supporting our social service agencies, because local support is really going to be what they need to continue to provide the services to the most needy families that we have in our community. And so I certainly could not support a budget that excluded those families out of the city of Urbana. And in any future discussion, it would be quite difficult for us to justify spending money on all of the pet projects that come out of the city of Urbana and not spending money on the basic needs of its residents, food, clothing, and shelter. So any budget to exclude those people, I would be certainly against. And I would hope that my colleagues would see the importance of taking care of the most needy in the city of Urbana. And you can't leave it to a foundation, because foundations, the money goes up and down, and every now and again you'll just kick the Head Start children right out of Head Start, or there won't be child care services, or people will be homeless in the streets. These are not the things I believe are the values of the city of Urbana. Sometimes we got to forget about the trees and take care of the needs of the people, and that's the budget that I'm willing to support.
Okay. Charlie Smythe.
Echoing Carol's comments and reinforcing them, I think that one of the points that we're forgetting is that we make investments in lots of different things. We have investments in downtown businesses. We have these $2,000 and $3,000 grants that we give. We have $5,000 grants over here. We have TIF districts. We have enterprise zones. Those are investments in businesses, corporations, in people. Social services is an investment in foundations, community organizations who turn around and use that money as seed money to go out and get additional grant money from other organizations. Without that seed money, they would not be able to bring in countless thousands of dollars to this community to help those most in need. So just as we invest in businesses and make those other investments, it's really important that we make investments in the groups that Michelle listed and the many others. And there are only 24 or 25 that we're able to do. We have 50 or so organizations that ask for money. We haven't been able to expand that for a number of years as much as we'd like to. So I think it's really important. We can't just invest in those who have money. We have to invest in those who need our support too. So, okay, the other thing that I think everybody's failing to remember is that the Carl Foundation, Carl Hospital tax issue is a recent one. And the same issue with Provena. That came about in 2002. That was that was not taxed before 2002 or whatever, and the various things have gone back and forth. What people need to remember is that Carl Clinic, the group of physicians, was a long-standing taxpayer to this community, many millions of dollars. Probably most of what is missing from the budgets of the Park District and the school district were from that Carl Physician group, that Carl Clinic. Christie Clinic is still a taxable entity. They still pay taxes. Okay, so Carl Clinic, as it used to exist, was absorbed into the hospital, and by that trick of being merged into the not-for-profit, those doctors who made $107 million on their last 990 report in 2011 or 12, I can't remember which year, that $107 million that they made, they can't provide this community with $6 million of support that is the difference in your property tax today? Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Smythe, seconded by Roberts, if I recall. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Ammons,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Madigan,
No.
Miss Marlin,
No.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Smythe.
Yes.
Mr. Grosser, does there have to be the same kind of supermajority for the township budget as there is for the city budget? Or is it a simple majority? Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification. Well, that motion carries. Okay. Okay, we've already discussed social service funding. The next is the consideration of Kemper CPA Group, LLP, to perform Cunningham Township audit for the fiscal year 2014 and 2015. Michelle?
I sent everyone an email on April 23rd pertaining to this. I did receive phone calls and responses back, so if anybody has any questions, fire away.
Diane?
I'll just say Michelle.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Carol?
I apologize, I can't see.
Carol, go ahead.
I was just going to say Kemper does a very excellent job, so I support this motion.
Okay, Diane?
And I had asked Rich Henschel to weigh in on this because I just wanted to know what best practice was for, issuing RFPs and how often you're supposed to change auditors. So if he could give his perspective on this, that'd be great.
It used to be in the past, generally auditors were retained for an extended period of time, often 10 years or more. But over the last 10 or 20 years or so, due to certain unfortunate circumstances in different places, different corporations, and even certain governments, the recommendation has now been reduced to do something less than 10 years. Usually 5 to 7 years is an average period of time to retain an auditor. It's recommended to have an audit for at least 3 or 4 or 5 years because it takes a new audit firm a few years to get familiar with the organization, to get familiar enough to be able to ask very insightful questions and do a more extensive job with the audit. It takes them a couple of years to get to that point. So usually 5 to 7 years is an average period of time. And when you do an RFP, as we did most recently, advertise it as broadly as you can, seek out the firms both regionally and maybe statewide or nationally that would be the type of firm that would be interested and capable of performing the audit.
Okay, any other questions? Eric?
I think I know the answer to this, but just to be sure, I'm assuming that the issues that you uncovered with perhaps inappropriate payments, those weren't anything that an auditor would have noticed, are they?
Correct.
Okay.
No, they would not have.
Okay, Diane?
So I understand you're asking to keep them on for at least a couple more years, just because you're new at the job and they're helping you through the transition.
For 2 more years.
Okay.
One, the audit that they are going to perform in July is the audit, is the budget that was presented to you before I took office. So they would be auditing that, which is not mine. And then this audit, or this budget that I've presented, they would audit. And this one I'm 100% responsible for. But when you asked about the Build Urbana line item, those types of things, there are some new ones in there that are done at the request of the auditor when I had a couple of meetings with him, so.
Okay, why don't we have a motion here? I don't
Yeah.
think we have one yet.
Well,
Do you want to make a motion?
I will, but I would also like to point out, and then the thing we need to do is, if we pass this, regardless, at some point, 2016, then we need to put out an RFP and go through the same process that we've just done with the city.
Correct.
And with that understanding, I'll move approval.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion by Smythe, seconded by Marlin. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.